a teardrop shaped star. Paired with a red giant, Dr. Brad Tucker and I go in depth on this Talking Science Story of the Week.
Across Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts and YouTube, this is Talking Science with Dr. Brad Tucker and Matt Miller.
All right, well, the reason we're here is not because of coronavirus, but for us.
Well, look, we are definitely have a 2,000 kilometer buffer between us, so we are following the medical advice.
This is very true. And this is the advantage of podcasting from the home studio. The show can go on as much as it needs to.
Yes.
And amateur astronomers have discovered a teardrop-shaped half-pulsating star. This is pretty cool.
It is. So this was found using TESS, so the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, the replacement Kepler Space Telescope. And the goal is to find planets around other stars, but it also, by finding planets around other stars, it sees weird stars, weird behavior stars. And what they saw was essentially pulsing star quakes, but instead of it happening evenly, so if you think of our sun, we get eruptions all across the surface, it's only happening on one hemisphere, the hemisphere pointed to another object, which means that the star itself is actually quite distorted and disfigured, for lack of a better term.
It is very cool. The star is HD 74423. It's about 1,500 light years from Earth. And as you say, flagged by the planet hunting satellite TESS. It's certainly very unusual, and I think this is the first time we've seen anything like this.
Yeah, because what TESS is looking for is changes in brightness because a planet goes in front of a star. But what they saw was this thing was happening all the time, that the star itself has a very weird period. And we know stars go through changes. This is not a new thing. But we've never have seen it essentially only happening on one hemisphere. So imagine the Earth, and only the tides and the waves are happening on one side of the Earth and not the other. This is essentially what's happening on the star. Something quite dramatic. Now, something like this has been predicted for better part of 4 decades. It's just never been found. And so the great thing about TESS is all of the data is open and available to the public to look through. And this is exactly how it was found, is trying to find these needles in the haystack. When you're looking at so many things, you're going to miss the sort of rare things. And we talked about a few months ago where my student wrote a program to find some of these really rare explosions in Kepler and now TESS, because there's so much stuff out there. And this is how this one came about.
And it's a binary star system. It's partnered with a red dwarf star that it's orbiting so close and so fast that the orbit is about 2 Earth days.
That's right. And because of its weird orbit, it's only essentially stuck on one side. It's kind of like a giant rope. It's similar to what we call why the moon we only see one side of the moon. So there isn't a dark side of the moon. There's just a near side, a side we see, and a far side. Now it happens that far side gets light and dark just as the side we can see. But here, because the way the red dwarf's orbiting the other star, it's only tugging on one side of the planet, or one side of the other star rather. So as it tugs, these quakes and these motions are only happening. So the entire star is now, over millions and millions and billions of years, has been distorted by this everlasting, non-fading tugging, which is kind of a really cool thing to show just how the interaction between multiple star systems actually can, and what that means for the whole solar system that may be around it.
Let's speculate a little bit. I think it's reasonable to assume that there could be planets around this binary star system, whether they are in this system or not. But what would a planet be like if it was in the Goldilocks zone? What would a day be like?
Well, so this is a good point. You talked to Rajika a few months ago about circumbinary planets, these Tatooines, planets orbiting 2 stars. And yeah, we know they exist. And it is, as you said, very likely, at least potentially, that a planet orbits this. Now, if it orbits both, it's going to be quite different, because as it orbits both stars, let's say the planet goes around both stars, what's going to happen is the one half of the year, when you have the red dwarf and the other star, and that you're on the side that's being tugged, you're actually going to have a lot more solar activity. So you're going to have more waves of energy hitting the planet. And then that goes around to the other side. It's a very quiet time. It's just kind of only one star, right? So there'll be half the year where you have 2 stars, and half the year where you essentially just have 1 star. And so you could imagine that life would have to form very differently. Now, I would say it's almost, I'll never say impossible because space always says it is possible, that you'd have a planet just orbiting one of them because, as you said, they're so close, it's going to be physically hard to get another planet to have formed in between one of those two stars, which means that you have half a year of two sunsets and half a year of one sunset.
That'll make for some beautiful Instagram photos.
Look, yeah, that's right. You want to find that right time as you're transitioning. You know, it's kind of like living in the Arctic or the Antarctic where you have continuous nighttime, sometimes continuous daytime, and then you have that transition. That's what you would probably get on these planets. And of course, the life would have to form slightly differently, right? If half the year you're blasted by not twice, but 1.5 times the amount of energy and radiation, the extreme seasons will be quite extreme.